Hi, I am Becky Meagher, and welcome to Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit. Transitions, we have so many transitions in our life. Maybe we grow up thinking we're going to be a fireman, and then we change and do something totally different. I like to use the metaphor of triathlon, something I've been doing for 25 years. And in triathlon, the first thing you do is swim. And after you get out of the water, then you go in a transition area and then get ready to get on your bicycle. And then you bike and then again get in a transition area and then you run. I like to give that as an example of all the various things that we get into. We thought we were going to do this. Things come into our lives. And today we have such an amazing person. Somebody who had a band, a musician, a man that sold gentlemen's clothing, went to the seminary, became a priest, and has a nonprofit to help women against trafficking. I want to introduce Father Peter Spiro. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yay! You're such a busy man. I want to get a little inkling about your background. I believe you were raised in the Chicago area?
Yes, South Suburbs. So I was born in Chicago, raised in the South Suburbs, spent the first half century of my life in Chicago, and now I'm here. So.
Half century, okay, wow. And you were raised in the Greek Orthodox Church, right? And I believe you're second generation Greek?
Yeah, second generation born in America. So my parents were first generation in America. My grandparents were born in Greece.
Okay. All right. And then you grew up in a neighborhood, you can't say it was a little rough, maybe?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah, it was back in the day, you had to handle yourself or get handled. So that was just kind of the area that I grew up in.
Yeah. And that kind of did you well. You believe that you want to be a musician, right? You were in high school and had a band?
I did, yeah. Music was kind of everything for me. I enjoyed playing. I enjoyed listening to music. I would go to concerts with any free money I had. And it was just, music was every class I could possibly take in high school. And I thought that was the way that I was going to be going. Yeah, there was nothing else in the way except for music. That was the only thing I wanted to do.
And then you went to college. You got a scholarship?
I did. I had a full scholarship at Roosevelt University College of Music, and I went there, and that's when I realized things weren't kind of going right. It wasn't because I was incapable or anything. It just nothing. Just kind of like going the wrong way down a one-way street, it felt to me. And so I was there for a short amount of time, and then I dropped out of college, which my parents
got a full scholarship. They said this isn't working.
My parents were not happy about that at all. But
and then what happened?
Then I worked. I kept working different jobs. I mean, I worked since I was like 10 years old, delivering newspapers. I kind of worked everywhere from grocery stores to, you name it, selling phone book ads to working in the clothing store. But I worked in the music store. We sold musical instruments, and I worked there. I started to figure out what I was going to do in the meantime while playing. What am I going to do? And I got a job at a stockbroker firm and was studying to take my Series 7 license to be a stockbroker. And that's when, as you were saying, the transition from coming out of the water to the bike and running, and that's when things kind of changed for me.
And you did have what I would call quite a spiritual experience in a classroom, right? I
did, yeah. I was sitting in this class that was prepping us for the test for the
to be a stockbroker.
Yeah, and I was sitting there, and I heard, "You will go to the seminary," And it was not the person that was in the front of the class. It wasn't anybody else. And it was kind of one of those moments when you watch a war movie and a grenade goes off and everything is kind of ringing in the background. You don't hear anything else. That's exactly what happened. I just sat there and I was like, what was that all about? So I sat there and for some time, I mean, these classes were from like 9 to 5 every day. And I was sitting there. That was day one that happened at like 9 o'clock in the morning. So
Wow.
that was the first, like literally seconds after it started. And then I went through the whole class, took the test, and then came back and said to my family again, I'm going to quit my job and go to the seminary. And they're like, oh, great, you know, another brilliant decision.
Transition.
So, yeah. So that's how I.
And the seminar was 7 years?
Yes, 7 years.
Okay.
I did it in 6, and I worked my way through.
You worked in...
I worked in a jewelry store, so...
jewelry, and I thought there was a clothes store in there too.
I worked in the clothing store prior to going to the seminary. So once I knew I was going to the seminary and I quit the trading company, I started working in a clothing store, and I was working in a music store at the same time, trying to save money to go to school.
Wow.
And then the clothing store kind of developed, and they wanted me to move to New York to take a job that would have cured a lot of my financial problems at the time. But you know, I told the district manager, I'm going to the seminary, and he kind of looked at me like, "What? You're an assistant manager at the store. What are you doing?" So yeah, that's how I was working clothing. And then when I was at the seminary, I got a job working in a jewelry store. So I worked.
Okay. So there were 7 years of seminary. You put yourself through the seminary. The school cost money, right?
Yeah, I did it in 6
You
just
did
to
it
save.
6.
I did it in 6 to save money. It wasn't anything about like being aggressive, you know, academically or anything. It was just like I need to get through this as quickly as possible so I can afford to.
So you can get
when I get out, it's not going to be as bad with student loans as
Yes.
7 years.
So there you are. You are a priest, right? And what happened next?
Well, I got married my last year, so as Greek Orthodox, we can get married, which was the early tradition of the church that allowed. St. Peter was married, as we know. So I got married, and then I got ordained. I served a very large church in the Chicagoland area, and then I was ordained there, and then I got transferred to another church that was slightly smaller, but still very busy. And then one day I got a call from the state police asking me if I would consider being a chaplain for the state police.
A chaplain of the state police of Illinois?
Yes.
Okay, the state police, meaning is that what you're supposed to be? That wasn't just Chicago, it was more?
Illinois State Police takes care of the highways, tollways in Illinois. So there's different
Like a state
divisions.
trooper we see
Yes,
here.
exactly. So like
Okay.
Tennessee Highway Patrol here, it's the same thing. Illinois State Police is very similar to the Highway Patrol.
So that means you had to quit the diocese, right?
No, I was still doing that. So there's, I was still working full time as a parish priest, and I was an assistant priest at that time. And then I went to the State Police Academy. They had a training for us there, and then I served there for 5 years, in addition to state police for 5 years, in addition to being in the parish.
Wow.
And
And did you need to learn how to handle a handgun and all that kind of stuff?
yeah, we had all
Training?
that. Yeah, we had different trainings. Not as much there as when I was at the sheriff's department. When I went to the sheriff's department, it was more training, and so I was at the state police for 5 years, and then I went to the Kane County Sheriff's Department for about 8 years.
Which sheriff's?
Kane County.
Kane
Sheriff's,
County.
yeah,
And
so it's just kind of, if
that
you look at
Illinois
Chicago,
also?
it's in one of the suburbs, the western suburbs of Chicago.
So in Kane County, were you still dealing with a diocese too?
I still was a parish priest. So
How do you do this?
Yeah, it was, I don't know.
Wow.
So I was doing that part-time, full-time parish priest. And we were actually on a SWAT staging for the sheriff's department, and one of the snipers on the team asked me, he said, hey, Padre, everybody called me Padre. He said, Padre, what if I kill that guy? What is God going to say? And I had already started to go back to school at that point. So this was like in 2008. I was already back in postgraduate school, and I was like, that's a great, that's a thick topic.
Yes.
So that's when I was working on my doctorate, and that's my dissertation was on the theology of lethal force for law enforcement and military. So what does God say about that? And that would be a whole nother show, but that was, for me, that was a very important thing. I was like, I'm either going to get a degree or excommunicated for what I write. And I got the degree. It was Orthodox. I had Orthodox readers for my paper, and it made its way overseas during the Iraq War and was used for some soldiers. And then the military acknowledged me for that by making me an honorary colonel in the Army.
Oh my heavens!
For that work, because it was really about the hesitation in lethal force that a law enforcement officer would do that would cause the law enforcement officer or the soldier to get killed in the line of duty. So why is that hesitation? And is that hesitation tied into spiritual contemplation? Is it tied into bad training? Is it tied into you can talk your way out of scenarios? So I had used the FBI stats to kind of pull all that information together, and it became a training tool.
Your PhD was in that.
Yeah, that was my final work.
So I should have said you are Dr. Reverend Peter, Father, how many titles?
What is it? Doesn't matter.
Wow.
As long as I don't get called late to the dinner table, I'm in good shape. So that's why everybody calls me Padre. Nobody knows. There's different titles, and it doesn't really. No, it's it is what it is. At the end of the day, it was a tool to help others. It wasn't really to anything to enhance my name or anything like that.
What a question, though. It's a matter of in war, you shoot people, and if you hesitate, then you could be shot. And a quandary to put that on paper. Wow.
Yeah, it's a delicate topic. I typically don't share that with non-law enforcement because I didn't want it to be misconstrued or for people to go around and say, oh, you can go kill everybody. That's not what it's about at all. It's really about that sacred responsibility that dates to biblical times, pre-biblical times, and post-biblical times of really what is the authority that's given to someone who keeps the peace. What is a peacemaker? So blessed are the peacemakers. What does that mean? What does that look like through the early Christian church writers, biblical tradition, theology? How does that all pull together so that someone can say, what I'm doing has a great responsibility, but it also has there's a great authority, there's great responsibility, and it has to be wielded very carefully and sacredly. So.
Wow. So you were getting your PhD here, but you're still working with the diocese, and you are the state chaplain?
I was, so in Kane County, I was auxiliary deputy chaplain, the lead chaplain for the sheriff's department, and a head parish priest at that point in time at a parish out in the suburbs in Kane County, Illinois. Okay,
and as a chaplain, can you give an example? They call you in when this happens?
Kind of all the worst stuff that you could imagine.
To console somebody's been killed. The mother is there.
It's not just consolation, but it's also transitioning them too. So what do you do? If a police officer comes by and says, "Hey, your son was killed in an accident, or they were shot, or they committed suicide," and then the police officer delivers that information and the information in that investigation, whatever it is, but then what do they do? What does that person do? Would they know what to do next? The civilian. So that's where I would be there with the deputy or the trooper or whatever, transitioning them, saying, okay, who do we call? Do you have a faith-based, do you have family members? Who do we need to notify? Is everybody in the house in this room? Because, part of the trainings that I would do for death notifications, when you walk into somebody's house at 2 a.m, and you're with a police officer and you deliver the worst news of someone's life and they scream, you don't know if someone's going to come out of another room with a shotgun thinking they're being robbed or anything like that. So it's a very delicate
Whoa.
situation, and really the part of what I did was to make sure that when we left a scene, that individual, that civilian, was networked with whoever they needed, so that they didn't become an issue that we had to deal with later. So that they didn't hurt themselves, so that they knew what to do next. They knew where the person was, their loved one. They had somebody there. They had a faith-based group or whoever was their confidants. And then also, I did debriefings for law enforcement too. So when they see terrible things, who deals with them?
The police, the law enforcement, I mean, they see all this, and what do they do with that mentally?
And some of it connects with them, and some of it doesn't. So, and when I say it doesn't connect, it doesn't throw them off balance. But for example, we had one situation where there was a police officer who was traveling in Illinois and got in a car accident, and he had a small child in the back in a car seat, and both the officer and the child were killed in this accident. And the officer who pulled up on the scene saw it, and he's done accidents before, but when he pulled the ID and saw the badge and then saw the child in the back, he had a small child. So that connected with him, and he said, here's a cop who came to travel here, got killed, and he's got a child just like me. And that's something that with the trauma training and things that I did for law enforcement for many years was really to make sure that they were, when they left the scene, also the trooper or the deputy or the police officer was able to function for the rest of the day and not be completely distracted, where that would cause them an issue on the next stop, where their head is not fully into what they're doing.
Wow. Yeah. So you somehow you were doing this, and you were kind of like invited into it. He didn't seek working with the police, right? It's like, hey, you, like you said, they solicited you. Hey, would you help us? Hey, would you help us? And the next step is somehow or other you came to Nashville?
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
So the parish I was at for 17 years. And
near Chicago.
Near Chicago. Okay. And I was working at the sheriff's department. I got transferred into the city from the suburbs. And there was a change of ministry. It was just a different parish. It had different needs. A lot of the things that I was doing, I could no longer do there, and things that they needed me to do were different from what I was used to, and kind of the wheelhouse of what I did, what I thought I did well.
It wasn't a good fit then.
It was an unexpected change for me. I didn't request that. It was just imposed. So I was there for 11 months, and it was kind of COVID, and all the transitions that happened around COVID. And then Nashville opened up, the parish in Nashville, and we had been out here a handful of times and really liked the area. And so I said, well, let's see if we can go there. So we came out here, and I was serving the church for 2 years, the Greek Orthodox Church here for 2 years, and then I got solicited again to go back into law enforcement, and that's where I started working for Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. Okay,
and are you still, you're not with a diocese anymore, right?
I am, all right, so in America there's the Archdiocese, which is kind of the overarching of the United States, and then underneath is the diocese. And they're called metropolises, even though they're the basic structure is a diocese. The Diocese of Detroit oversees Tennessee. Because I am a chaplain, and because I've also been brought on as the director of the Freedom Ministry in the Archdiocese, which is a human trafficking awareness ministry that I developed with the Archbishop's approval and all the bishops in the United States. I moved from being a diocese priest to an archdiocese priest. So I'm directly under the archdiocese staff. And not, I'm not considered a parish priest. I'm considered a director of ministry in the Archdiocese of America.
Okay, so you're here in Nashville. now we're going to be, and you get solicited for the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, TBI, and then we're getting into the trafficking. Is that what I'm? And tell me, what is the trafficking that we hear? Women are trafficked, and it's the new slavery, and what is that? Give us a short explanation. What is that?
Okay. Let me rewind a little bit and just say that the foundation that I started at the same time when I started at TBI.
Yes, and name that foundation.
Is Aristevi, Aristevi, which means in Greek to excel. But it's also assistive response in supporting trafficked educational vocational initiative.
Okay.
So that foundation, in addition to what I do at the Bureau as the chief chaplain and also being part of the trafficking unit as a trainer, that is kind of how trafficking came to the forefront of everything that I do now. The human trafficking is the forced fraud or coercion of an individual for either sex or labor, and also organ harvesting, which is another very awful thing that's happening in the world. So we have the U.S. State Department says there's approximately 27.6 million people worldwide, with up to that number reaching 50 million of currently trafficked individuals in the world, which means if you add up from the time before Christ, from the Roman, so if you go to Spartacus, if you're a historian and you go to Spartacus and realize he was a soldier and he was a slave, you go from the time of Spartacus all the way up to the 20th century and add up everybody, add up every single group that was ever enslaved, including the 400-year transatlantic slave trade, including the 444-year slavery of the Greek nation, and add everybody up together, it's still less in that 2,200 years than exists today.
Wow, that's
so
mind-blowing.
if you add all those people together, it's still less than how many people are in modern day slavery today.
Wow.
Which is a staggering number. So what is it? It's individuals who are forced into labor, they're forced into sex trade, they're forced into parting themselves out, their bodies, because of this manipulation from these master manipulators that are out there. And it is something that is now being more understood as a global problem. But for many years, when I first started studying human trafficking and getting certifications was in 2011. And in 2011, there wasn't as much as there is now. There wasn't the support structure, there wasn't the services that were there. Law enforcement didn't really have specialized teams back then. Very rarely did you see that there were stings for trafficked individuals. And then now we are, part of my training that I do for parishes here in Tennessee through the Bureau, or the trainings that I do, or representation for the Archdiocese, is to, first of all, clarify the difference between smuggling and trafficking. So smuggling is the offense against a border. Trafficking is the offense against a human being. Now you can smuggle someone and traffic them, but a lot of times when I encounter faith-based organizations or even just regular individuals, they don't know the difference between smuggling and trafficking. They think it's just someone coming over the border, and that's not the case. You can come over the border into the United States and not be trafficked, and you can also be in the United States and be trafficked and never have been smuggled. So,
wow. So is the main thing, as far as like in Tennessee, the trafficking is 14-year-olds, 15, give a typical, somebody has no money and their parents sell them off, or what is it?
Yeah, it's individuals with particular vulnerabilities. And those vulnerabilities can be from financial to cognitive vulnerabilities. You can have someone with gender issues, you can have someone that has domestic violence in the household, you can have someone who's depressed, you can have someone who is has mental disabilities, physical disabilities, and that solicitation many times that draws them into trafficking is digital. So they go on a site, or they start chatting with someone, and they say, "Hey, I understand what you're coming from. Where you're coming from. My parents were beating me too, or I was molested as a child, and I have a group, and we're gonna we have a house, and you're gonna be safe, and come with us."
Okay,
and then
enticing.
and then they just kind of go out the door. So most trafficked victims walk out the door. And they are going into the arms of a trafficker, and they don't even realize that until they get in the car. And then there's that lock-in when they say, "Now you're ours, and now this is what you have to do. Otherwise, we'll hurt you, we'll hurt your family." And
so if a regular citizen, we don't have a whole lot of time, sees something they suspect is somebody being trafficked, do they call the police, or how do they do that?
There's a hotline.
There's a hotline.
But I would say the best way, instead of trying to remember a hotline number, is to call 911.
Really?
So if you see someone that you think is looks awkward, or they go into a restroom and they change the color of their hair and they come out, or they're hovered over by someone who doesn't look right, or you see someone that it's just very young at a gas station walking around soliciting people, and those are definite calls out. And I would say that we would rather, anyone in the human trafficking combating arena would rather see someone call, even if it's not human trafficking, than just to let it go.
Wow. And I never thought you could just call 911. I suspect this. Can somebody come and take a look?
Yeah,
wow.
And the awareness is much more to the forefront of everyone's thought in law enforcement, and pretty much everywhere. Hospitals now, other airports. You can go in the airports, you see human trafficking signs. Are you here on your own? Or is someone following you? If you go into BNA and walk into a restroom, you'll see those PSAs everywhere.
Yeah. Wow, amazing. And so you are here in Nashville, and you're enjoying the South, I hope. And
yeah, it's good.
And was there anything that's next for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. I got a lot of things going on. No, I have a lot of things going on. So the foundation, we're really trying to build that to service needs and holes for human trafficking survivors and interpersonal violence survivors.
And you are giving education to some of these women who have been trafficked, right?
We support them. We put one of our recent graduates just graduated from Oxford University with her international business degree.
In England?
In England. And the foundation put her through school. So we have other students that we put through school. We have the clothing outreach that you're very familiar with, that your church helped out with.
My church helped.
We have a salon. We're working on a clinic, a medical clinic, and we also do spiritual services for them too. So we have a non-denominational chapel that we can help with their spiritual needs as well.
Wow, the full package. Wow. Well, Padre, thank you so much for being on our program, and we'll probably have to get you back to talk more.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Transitions.